Welcome. My name is James Milan, and we are here with Tom Conroy, who is a Democratic candidate for state treasurer. Thank you for participating.
Thank you for having me on the show, James.
Want to go over right away just the ground rules for the interview. The format will be as such. This will be a live-to-tape interview, and that means that no edits once we begin. There was no pre-screening of questions, and answers will be limited to 2 minutes each. And we will start with a 1-minute opening statement from the candidate, and after the questions, we will conclude with a 1-minute closing statement. So, Mr. Conroy, you have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Great. Well, thank you, James, and I want to thank the Arlington station for having me on the show. It's a great opportunity. I am Tom Conroy. I'm a state rep. I'm from Wayland, just west of here. Also privileged to represent Sudbury, Marlborough, and Framingham for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I worked in the private sector, and I started my career after college actually working for a couple of Democratic senators down in Washington, D.C. I'm running for state treasurer because I want to create educational and job opportunities for people all across this Commonwealth and use the values of economic justice and equality of opportunity for everyone that have guided me for the past 25 years of my professional career to create those opportunities to make sure that Massachusetts is financially and economically strong far into the future. And I believe that I've got the qualifications, the background, and the experience to do that better than any candidate in this race. And I'm asking for your support, all of you viewers out there. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will start right in with the questions now, and I'll just remind you that you have 2 minutes to answer each question, and we'll be observing that time limit very strictly.
Sure.
So the first question is a combination. Why are you running for state treasurer, and what prepares you to serve in this capacity?
Well, it's a classic question. I think voters really do want to understand exactly why I'm running, why any candidate is running for office. And to me, I do see a couple of different opportunities here. The Treasurer's Office has authority to open up those educational opportunities, expand what's happening in early education here in Massachusetts. I'd like to see universal pre-K education, and through the school building authority that the treasurer manages, I think we can move ahead. I'd like to move ahead on that. Student debt crisis, a huge problem for families and students all across this Commonwealth. Treasurer's Office has a role there. I think the treasurer can be more of a people's banker to break down those financial barriers to people wanting to go to college and being able to afford it. Thirdly, I'd like to invest more of our taxpayer dollars in our local banks so that they can lend more to local businesses and create job opportunities for people in local Main Street middle class jobs. And I think those are 3 things that I'd like to do, 3 reasons why I'd like to be the next treasurer. I also want to address the very significant financial and fiscal challenges that we face here in the Commonwealth. We are managing our finances well. I've been a part of that for the past 8 years, and I've got a track record of achievements and results related to issues that the treasurer handles every day. But I'd like to get more involved, more directly involved in addressing our long-term liabilities and our pension funds and on healthcare liabilities. I'd like to be more involved with rebuilding our infrastructure and issuing the bonds, which is one of the roles the treasurer plays, so that we can have a 21st century infrastructure here that will encourage businesses to create jobs right in Massachusetts. I'd like to use the school building authority in a way that really does open up educational opportunities and works with the municipalities to help them finance greater educational opportunities for their students. So a lot that I'd like to do, a lot of reasons why I want to run, a lot of reasons why I want to be the next treasurer in Massachusetts.
Thank you. Next question is, do you believe the state treasurer has been an aggressive watchdog on behalf of taxpayers? And please give us specific examples to support your answer.
I think yes, but I think there's more that could be done. Steve Grossman has done a good job in a lot of different areas. I am a person who comes with a real finance and management consulting background, almost an audit type background as well, with an eye towards making sure that Massachusetts taxpayers trust their government and their elected officials, because we are making the analytical sort of priorities out there and ensuring that those taxpayer dollars are being invested wisely, spent prudently, and managed effectively. I entered public office, James, because I fundamentally want to enhance the public's trust in government. I want to enhance the public's trust in elected officials. And that is something that I want to continue to do for the next 8 years as state treasurer. One way to do that is doing more return on investment analyses, looking at each budget line item and making sure that when we think about, is this good for us as taxpayers in terms of government services provided in the short term as well as the long term? Are we putting too much of a financial burden on the next generation or the generation thereafter? Are we leaving financial mess for people, or are we making decisions today that are making sure that we are going to be financially and economically strong far into the future? That is going to be a daily task and a daily priority for me as the next state treasurer. Doing that work, bringing analytical rigor into the treasurer's office, looking at all the revenues coming in and all the expenditures going out, because it flows right through the treasurer's office. And I'm going to have my eyes and ears on all of this stuff. I'm going to work with the over 50 colleagues of mine who are endorsing me in this race, state reps right now. I'm going to work with them to ensure that we are partnering to ensure that we are spending taxpayer dollars wisely and offering the kind of services so many people want and deserve out of their state government.
Thanks. And can you give us 2 examples of how you think the state treasurer, you said, I know that you think in general he's done a good job, but how could he have done more or better over the last 4 years?
Well, the priorities that I talked about earlier on the educational front, pre-K education. I know Steve wants to do that now as a candidate for governor. I think more could be done as the state treasurer. The student debt issue, a real crisis. $1.2 trillion out there across the country of families and students being indebted, frequently to Wall Street bankers who are charging 10, 12, 14% interest on student loans. I know about this issue in part because I have triplet daughters who are just recent graduates of Wayland High School. They're going into college in a couple of weeks. We are facing these very daunting college tuitions and the debt that we are already taking on to pay for that. I want to address this not for personal means because this is just good economic policy. It's good financial policy. It's what a treasurer should be doing. As I said, more of a people's banker. That is a real priority that I want to bring to this office. I think we can do more in terms of speaking out and speaking up on the budget. As I said, I want to partner with my colleagues. I'm not going to forget the fact that I'm a bit of a real budget watchdog. I did that for 8 years up at the State House as a legislature, and I enjoy doing it. I'm a guy that likes spreadsheets and likes crunching numbers. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, math was always my forte. So there's an enjoyment out of being engaged and involved and partnering with others at the State House to focus on budget issues as opposed to just doing the financial mechanic work of what the treasurer sometimes is sort of thought of. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to do more. I'd like to be a bit more creative and a little bit more expansive. And that's something different than what Steve has done.
Thank you. What specific proposals would you seek to implement to help the state economy? You mentioned before, creating jobs and attracting business to the Commonwealth.
Right. Well, we talked about the Massachusetts taxpayer dollars. Basically, what the treasurer does is manages the state's checking account. You've got a checking account, I've got a checking account. You've got to park that money in a bank and invest it somewhere, right? Do we invest it in a Swiss bank account or a California mutual fund? Or do we want to invest more of it in the 173 locally chartered banks right here in Massachusetts so that they can loan more money to local businesses? Or, for example, with stronger balance sheets, because some of this money these cash deposits are being placed with these banks from the treasurer's office, perhaps they can offer lower cost student loans. Perhaps they can offer lower cost mortgages for more people to afford housing. These are some of the things that I'd like to see happen in a partnership, this small business banking partnership that I'm a big fan of, that Steve's done a good job launching. So that's a job growth opportunity. There's also the pension fund here in Massachusetts that has a portion of it, a very small portion of it, that less than 1%, that can be allocated in almost a private equity venture capital kind of way in Massachusetts-based businesses to have a better multiplier effect. We put that pension money to work here in Massachusetts businesses, help them grow. That's going to have a return on investment. That's going to have a multiplier effect on creating new jobs, new opportunities for people here in Massachusetts, as opposed to, for example, investing a lot of money in California-based companies or companies overseas, where we're not necessarily going to see the direct or even secondary effect and benefits of those kind of investments. That's a $50 million allocation now. I'd like to see it go up to $100 million. I'm going to work with my 50-plus colleagues at the State House who are supporting me to see if we can get that done. That's another way to grow jobs through the Treasurer's office. I'd like to really look closely at whether or not we can issue more debt in areas that will rebuild our infrastructure. We've got people sitting on the sidelines with a lot of skills in the building trades.
I'm afraid we've run out of time.
Yeah.
Thanks. Are you satisfied with the present state pension system? And if elected, would you pursue pension reform? And if yes, could you give us a couple of specific examples of what that would be?
Well, I've been working on this issue for the past 8 years, ever since I walked into the State House as a sworn-in state rep in January of 2007. And again, that's something that I think really differentiates me from the others in this race. I got asked by the governor's team to address some of the pension challenges that we face. And I helped author and draft a couple of rounds of pension reform back in 2007 and again in 2009. One was to ensure that some of the 105 pension funds that were underperforming would have better access to better investment management strategy and advice so that they could get a better return on investment. They were underperforming. We shifted some of those funds through that 2007-2008 reform into the asset allocation model that the Treasurer oversees as chairman. And that's been a winner. So I've already addressed one part of that. We closed a bunch of the loopholes that people were taking advantage of, abusing the pension system and some of the eligibility criteria that they shouldn't have had access to. I was a big part in those changes in 2009. So that is saving taxpayer dollars and addressing the unfunded liabilities in the pension fund. I got involved in the healthcare trust fund that pays for retirees and their insurance premiums through the state trust fund there. And that's something that I've authored a report on, which I'd be happy to share with your viewers, that offers a couple of different ideas, some of which I've put into legislation that have become law, that has allocated non-tax revenues into these long-term liabilities. So these are areas where I've already taken steps. These are the accomplishments that, again, and achievements differentiate me from others. These are the examples that I think your viewers will say, gee, Tom's prepared to do this job on day one, and I am. The other ideas that are out there, there are some, and I'd like to address those as the next treasurer, and I'd like to partner with the legislature to do that.
So please explain how the current distribution of lottery funds work.
Yes.
And if elected, would you pursue changes to that system? And again, if you can give us specific examples to support your reasoning.
Sure. So as many people know, the lottery is about a $5 billion business. It's an operation that's Treasurer manages. And my management consulting and business strategy and operational expertise in this area of helping businesses make the right choices, I think is very relevant. So I want to run that $5 billion business in a way that does a couple things. Is fair to the cities and towns in terms of the local aid that comes out of it. It's almost $1 billion now out of that $5 billion that is gambled, that comes back to cities and towns in the form of unrestricted government assistance, typically used for public safety and Department of Public Works. When we look at fairness, and there's been talk out there in the airwaves and through the media about whether or not the money flowing back to cities and towns and the allocation methodology and the formula that's used to allocate that money is equal to or equivalent to or similar to the amount of money flowing into the lottery from those cities and towns. Well, there is a fairness issue there, but it's got to be looked at and viewed under the guise of all the local aid that flows back to cities and towns from the Commonwealth, from the state. There's $1 billion and comes from the lottery. There's $4 billion that comes from the regular budget through the Chapter 70 education aid. And we need to look holistically at all of the allocations and all the money flowing back before we really make a judgment about what's fair and what's not fair. That's something I want to review. I want to evaluate it, see if it's right, see if it needs to be changed. What I also want to do as I look at the lottery and that local aid is protect it. We may have casinos in this Commonwealth very soon. And you can imagine that there's going to be cannibalization of lottery revenue. Somebody buying a scratch ticket today might go gamble at a casino tomorrow and not buy that scratch ticket. That $5 billion spend may shrink. That $1 billion of local aid going back to cities and towns is threatened. I want to address that. I'm a treasurer or a treasurer candidate that has a plan to address that.
Thank you.
And no others do.
Please give us one example of an issue that you and your opponents agree on, and two examples of issues on which you differ, and why your positions represent the best interests of the Commonwealth.
We agree on the fact that we're all against the growth of casinos in the Commonwealth. So that's one. On two, I think we probably all agree that these long-term liabilities need to be addressed, although I had the opportunity to ask one of them that question recently in a debate, and he didn't really have any formulated answer or response of any kind. The second part of the question was where we disagree?
Yeah, where you disagree.
So we disagree, for example, I know that Senator Feingold and I disagree on mandatory minimum sentences. We disagree when it comes to unemployment insurance benefits. He was the co-sponsor of a Republican bill that wanted to cut unemployment insurance benefits and restrict eligibility. I was the chair of the Labor and I have been and still am the chair of the Labor and Workforce Development Committee, and was the author, in essence, of two very important pieces of legislation that just became law. One is the minimum wage law, which I'm very happy to say got signed and is now going to be, we're on a path towards the highest state-based minimum wage in the country, going to help 600,000 workers get better pay, which is wonderful. The second piece was not my idea, but as chairman of the committee, I had to bring something forward on unemployment insurance benefits. What I'm proud of is that we didn't cut eligibility. We didn't restrict that. We didn't cut benefits. That's something that Barry wanted to do and I disagreed with. So those are a couple of examples of I know where we disagree. I have heard Deb Goldberg talk about not really supporting the small business banking partnership. We're investing more of that checking account money into local banks. She has been critical of that program. I've heard that at least on one occasion where we were at the same forum. And I think very highly of that program, as I've mentioned, and I'd like to continue it.
Thank you. Here's a simple one. What makes you the best candidate?
I think, as I've talked to voters all across the Commonwealth, they're not asking for much in their next treasurer in terms of the characteristics or the qualities they want, but they are asking clearly for three things. One, progressive values that they share, values around economic justice, values around equality of opportunity for everyone, and of course managing our money wisely. Number two, the experience and the expertise to do the job of treasurer on day one. And three, a track record of achievement and results related to the issues that the treasurer handles on a day-to-day basis. There's no one in this race other than me that has all three of those qualities. And I think that's a real message to your viewers and the listeners out there that are going to be voting on September 9th, is that I'm offering all of these capabilities and all of these qualities in a way that I think is going to help working families and help the residents of Massachusetts access those educational and job opportunities through the office of the treasurer, and in partnership, hopefully, with the next governor and the legislature, to make us financially and economically strong far into the future. I'm ready to do that job on day one. I'm ready to get involved in all those tough financial challenges that we're facing. And I think that's a real differentiator for me in this race.
And last question, what strategies would you use for working with members of other parties and with others of opposing views?
Sure.
And what experience do you have implementing such strategies?
Well, I'll tell you, one of my first real tough negotiations in politics was when I was a staffer in the United States Senate. and I was trying to broker a bill that I helped write on behalf of my boss, Senator Barbara Mikulski from Maryland, on divesting from apartheid and apartheid South Africa. And I had to negotiate this with a rather infamous and very right-wing Republican senator by the name of Jesse Helms, who wanted to insert the word communist in every single paragraph of that piece of legislation. Well, we struck a deal. We worked it out. I talked to his staff. I talked to him, and we got along, and it worked. And we got it done, and it got it passed into law. I have the ability, perhaps because I'm a middle child, some people point to that, I got 2 older brothers and 2 younger brothers, to be involved in a situation where I can see both sides of the story, both sides of the coin, as it were, and work with both sides in a reasonable, rational manner to craft solutions to challenging problems that we're facing. And I've done that for the past 8 years. One of my closest friends up at the State House is a Republican, Jay Barrows from Mansfield. We were classmates. We came in together in January 2007. Anytime I want to sort of find out what's going on with the Republican caucus and what their perspective is, or are they going to be offering amendments, I'm talking to Jay. We have a very strong working relationship. There are conservative Democrats in the legislature, on the Senate side and on the House side, that I've worked with too. Get along with them great. And I have, I think, demonstrated, ask anybody up at the State House, an ability to be cordial and respectful and courteous to everybody. And I think it's that personal relationship and that rapport that allows me to get more stuff done than the average legislator, and it's going to allow me to be very successful and achievement-oriented treasurer.
Thanks very much. Now you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Voters have a choice, James, and thank you again, and thank you for Arlington Cable Access TV for offering me this opportunity to talk to your viewers today. Voters have a choice in this treasurer's race, and it's a very important choice because this treasurer, any state treasurer here in Massachusetts, is managing a lot of money. A $60 billion pension fund, $5 billion lottery operation, $1 billion school building authority, issuing bonds virtually every month to the tune of a couple of $1 billion a year, with long-term implications and hundreds of millions of dollars in interest at stake. We need someone, and again, this is what I've heard from the voters, somebody that has the experience and the expertise and the financial ability to make the right choices and partner with the legislature to ensure that we are managing our taxpayer dollars prudently, wisely, and sufficiently so that we have a solvent pension fund.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. I was thinking 2 minutes on that. So.
We want to thank Mr. Conroy for participating in our conversation. Please make your voice count by voting at the state primary on September 9th. For Arlington Public News, this is James Milan. Thank you for joining us.